How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey y'all, welcome to the unofficial Intergalactic Heretic Prophet podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Zink. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back, everyone, for our second episode of the unofficial Intergalactic Heretic Prophet podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Zink, and we're going to dive right in to episode 2, which is about what we know about the characters in the game so far. So we're going to start with, the main character of the game, Jordan A. Munn. So Jordan is our protagonist. We know this. She is played by Tati Gabrielle, and Tati is starring in the upcoming Mortal Kombat 2 movie as Jade, which releases on October 24th, 2025, currently June 2025. Tati's also in The Last of Us Season 2 as Nora Harris for 3 episodes. I think a lot of people have seen that. She's played Joe Braddock in the Uncharted movie released in 2022. She was also in The 100, playing a character called Gaia. Now, The 100 was a sci-fi TV show about a group of human children who have to go back to Earth and basically bring it back and restore it after a nuclear war. So Tati was also in a TV miniseries called Kaleidoscope, playing a character called Hannah Kim. From what I was able to research, it looks like it's like kind of a heist sort of show. And then there's one last movie credit or TV credit I want to give for Tati Gabrielle here. It's for an animated movie that I watched 2 or 3 years ago, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And when I was doing research for this episode, I had no idea that Tati Gabrielle was a voice in it. And so it's a movie called The Doom That Came to Gotham. It's a Batman movie, and it's kind of set in this very freaky H.P. Lovecraft sort of animated style. And there's a lot of horror themes throughout the movie. And apparently Tati Gabrielle voiced a character called Kylie Kane. And so a very brief overview of this, in The Doom That Came to Gotham, an ancient evil is awoken by Bruce Wayne and an expedition that he's on somewhere in the North Pole or in the Arctic, somewhere frozen and icy, and I can't remember exactly which place it was, but yeah, and it takes place in like a 1920s version of Gotham. So you've got this kind of steampunk feel to it, and the technology and the way everything looks. So Kylie, who Tati voices, is a human adventurer skilled in lockpicking and enjoys reading. She was kind of a roaming vagabond until ending up in Bruce Wayne's group in charge of the ship's communication gear. They sail on a ship called the Argo around the world, and she eventually becomes the acting head of the Bruce Wayne Memorial Foundation. So that's who Tati voiced in that movie, The Doom That Came to Gotham. I watched it on HBO. It was awesome. Encourage everyone to check it out. So yeah, in Intergalactic, Jordan A. Munn is a bounty hunter. And just direct from the PlayStation website about this game so far, it says, set thousands of years in the future, Intergalactic the Heretic Prophet puts players into the role of Jordan A. Munn, a dangerous bounty hunter who ends up stranded on a distant planet known as Semperia. So right out the gate, they're establishing that Jordan is a dangerous bounty hunter. So in the first episode of this podcast, we covered the trailer, and a big part of that ended up being what was inside Jordan's ship, on her bulletin board and on her coffee table and other various places throughout the ship. And you can see that she was tracking, a group of people. And so this really demonstrated that she's incredibly skilled in tracking and research. If you haven't watched the first episode of the podcast about the first trailer and the bulletin board, definitely go look at that, because there's a lot of content there to find, and it will really clue you into just how good at tracking this type of information Jordan is. And it tells you about her that she's clearly a person of determination, someone who won't give up easily when she has, made up her mind about something, when she's set a goal about something. And in addition to that determination, Jordan is clearly quite resourceful. And you can see it throughout a number of different items on the bulletin board where, she's been tracking people across all different sectors of space in this universe. She's been obtaining security logins that she's not supposed to have to cameras. She's been tracking many different types of newspaper articles, tracking reporters. I mean, just tracking the financial dealings of different people that she's been searching for. So again, very resourceful, very dedicated to this. Definitely tells you that if you're someone that she wants to find, that's not great for you, because there's a pretty good chance she'll end up finding you. So yeah, that can tell you a lot about her, and what's crazy about that bulletin board sequence is there's only 8 to 9 seconds of the trailer, but it can tell you a lot about Jordan's character there. So yeah, in addition to being skilled in tracking and research, you can kind of deduce from the trailer that Jordan is skilled in combat somewhat too. And obviously, again, right on the PlayStation website, they call her a dangerous bounty hunter. So, unless she's only dangerous in her tracking and research, which I doubt, she definitely seems to be skilled in combat, because at the end of the trailer, you see her run at what we know is a large Semperium robot. And so Jordan is equipped with a red sword that I'll eventually do another episode, specifically about what we know about the weapons in this universe so far and some of the tech and, various parts of the universe like that. But so, it would tell you that she's proficient in melee combat. She charges a huge robot head on with using nothing but this red sword. And, again, right in the trailer, you can see she does an agile jump off a rock to her left, leaps off the rock to the robot, dodges a strike while doing so, and brings the red sword down in an overhead attack on the robot. So, you see right away that she's clearly skilled in melee combat. She clearly has, decent agility to be able to pull off a move like this. And one other thing I wanted to mention just about, some of the weapons and her skills in combat potentially, you see that she has a holster for what appears to be a small submachine gun on her right thigh. And she first picks up the submachine gun inside the ship, about 3 minutes into the trailer or so. And yeah, she's on a phone call, which we'll get to in a second, with another character where she's starting to kind of get ready to go. And she picks up the submachine gun. And it was kind of funny, honestly. She picked up the submachine gun and started kind of waving it around while talking and on the call, and like pointing at the person she's talking to on the TV with it. So, that can demonstrate a lot of proficiency. She has a lot of confidence in carrying this weapon. I guess it could also be a sign of not a lot of proficiency if you're just waving that around. But I have a feeling. It's meant to display proficiency with it. We never see the submachine gun used in the trailer, so we just don't know how good Jordan is with it, or what the mechanics of it are, how much there is to learn with it, or is it a submachine gun with bullets like we would be familiar with in our world, or is it going to be some sort of space sci-fi submachine gun where it's like a laser submachine gun or something else? Yeah, we just don't know that yet. But Jordan's carrying it and clearly felt comfortable enough with it to wave it around a little bit on her ship. So one of the last things I'll mention, just as far as what we know so far about Jordan's skills, or things about her character that she might be proficient in, her spaceship, you can see it does have two, what I would, being a sci-fi enthusiast, what I would want to identify as laser cannons on the spaceship, or laser guns. So presumably, she would know how to use those, unless maybe she just acquired her ship and is still learning. But once again, I have a feeling that's not the case. So yeah, I mean, given that Sony and PlayStation are telling you that she's a dangerous bounty hunter, that's been established. We know that she is skilled in melee combat. We know that she has high agility skills. We know that she can use this submachine gun. She's at least equipped with it. We know that her ship is equipped with 2 laser cannons. There could be more weapons on her ship that she has, that are part of her ship's weapons, and there could be additional weapons that she uses in ground combat as well, but we just don't really know any more than that. So yeah, just a couple of the things on Jordan's character, and again, we're just going off very limited information here, but Jordan takes a call with a character named AJ, who we're going to get to in just a minute or two after this. And after the call ends, Jordan clearly looks worried. There's some sort of concern or deep thought that Jordan is weighing about the subject of this call, until eventually, a sort of resolve comes over her face, and that's when the spaceship blasts off down to Semperia. So yeah, we just don't fully know exactly what's happening in the story yet. And just so everyone knows, we're gonna have probably the next episode is going to be a more comprehensive overview of the story itself and what is available about it right now. But yeah, so whatever's happening, Jordan's character is definitely kind of distressed about, has clearly put a lot of time and effort into getting to where she is right now. And yeah, I think the last couple things I'll wrap up with are just Jordan's attire. And yeah, I'm just interested in covering this just to see, what the attire could tell us about the universe, what we can figure out about the game, her character from what she's wearing. So yeah, Jordan dons what is kind of an iconic red jacket now for this game, with a horse head on the back of it. So it's a red jacket, it has a horse head on the back, and behind the horse head is this fascinating looking kind of yellow sun. It almost looks like it could be a setting sun, but it has these lines going through it. And I'm just not sure what the best way to describe it is, but there's a graphic on Steam that looks exactly like it, that you have to put a link to that in the show notes here. But so that's kind of her. She dons it to leave the ship and to go out. Before she puts that on, she's kind of wearing a gray tank top with just kind of regular looking pants. You know, the tank top and the pants very much give you the feel that she is a bounty hunter. They look sort of like clothes someone would wear if they were in a militia or if they were off-duty military or something like that. So definitely gives you the sense that once again that Jordan is someone with military training or military adjacent at least, and her clothes kind of reflect that. In addition to that, I mentioned this in the first episode of the podcast, the trailer, but you can see that Jordan's wearing it looks like dog tags. You can't see that there are dog tags on the chain, but it's the exact same type of chain that people wear dog tags with that we would know. So again, it kind of just reinforces that Jordan is someone who is military adjacent at the very least, and that's reflected in her attire. And the final thing I would mention about Jordan's character, that we know so far, and this is an obvious one because you see it right away. It's in every it's in every depiction of Jordan. Jordan has a shaved head, and I'm not exactly sure what that means. It might not mean anything. Maybe Jordan just wants to have a shaved head. Um, we just don't really know any more than that at this point. Again, it could be for convenience for someone who's routinely in combat situations. May not want to have hair, in your eyes, or just something you might not have to worry about. So yeah, that's a part of her character, which again will tell you that if she's choosing to have a shaved head to prioritize, ease of being in combat, it tells you once again that she's pretty dedicated to her craft. So yeah, that's kind of everything I was able to find about Jordan A. Munn as a character. I wish there was more. I looked pretty deeply. There is a lot of speculation out there. There's a lot of different people with different ideas. And at a certain point, I'm probably going to release an episode, sometime in the next month or two that is about the speculation that just covers, what people are thinking, what could be possible. For this episode, I really wanted to just cover, concretely, what do we know about the characters. So that's really all we got for Jordan. And with that, we'll move on to the next character. And I decided to cover the next character of that being AJ. And that's the woman who takes the phone call with Jordan, who calls Jordan. Jordan picks up the call, and AJ shows up on the TV. And the TVs are in like every room of the ship. And as far as we don't know yet, but as far as we know for now, it doesn't seem like AJ is going to be a vitally important character. But I decided to do her next in this order because at least like half the trailer or so is spent with Jordan talking to AJ in this video call. And, there was some important stuff that you can glean from that. So just wanted to do that first. So AJ, we know, is going to be played by Holly Gross. And this is confirmed on IMDb. It was also confirmed in Holly Gross's Instagram story, actually. And just want to shout out some of the internet gamer sleuths out there who dug this up and found it for all of us. So that's really cool. Holly Gross is, I think for right now, it's probably safe to say, is most well known as a writer for The Last of Us Part 2, the game. I believe she worked on The Last of Us Season 2, the TV show. I didn't know this till doing the research, but apparently Holly Gross was story editor on Westworld, and I just loved Westworld. Didn't get nearly as much acclaim or attention as I wanted it to, but I thought that was really cool to see that Holly was a part of that. And then, yeah, according to IMDb, Holly Gross has 20 different acting credits, playing a character on an episode of Gossip Girl, being in a couple different series of Law and Order, and apparently playing additional voices in The Last of Us Part 2. I'm not sure which ones, but, so apparently that's there too. So yeah, moving on from Holly Gross, who is AJ as a character? So AJ, is the woman who calls Jordan during the trailer and is on the TV screens, and you can tell that she has black hair or is very darkly brunette. Um, and I just want to say, the TV, the video call very much has an 80s tech feel about it, and and it looks like you're watching like TV in the 80s almost, except it's futuristic 80s sci-fi. So cool thing there, but it does make it a little hard to make out specific colors on certain things in the video call. So it looks like AJ has black hair. She definitely has an eye patch on her right eye, and you know, later on in the trailer, it looks like you kind of get more of a full body view of AJ, and it looks like she's wearing a black or a dark red. To me, just totally going off the cuff, what I saw here, it looked like sort of a leather jumpsuit. That could be black or dark red. That kind of turned into like a red collar at the top, but it wasn't buttoned all the way up. And you could see that AJ had rolled up sleeves on this very interesting appearing, what looks like jumpsuit sort of thing. So again, just found this fascinating to analyze, because we know that this world is set in like a 1980s alternate timeline set in a couple thousand years in the future, and I'm really just curious to see like if that's reflected in the fashion. And so far, it seems like it is, because it looked to me like like AJ had an 80s sort of hairdo as well. And I'm not even sure exactly what to call like the name of that hairdo, but you take one look at it and that's what you think. It's like, oh, that's an 80s hairdo. Yeah, and then AJ was also wearing some white pearl earrings. And honestly, I watched the trailer 3 or 4 times before I even noticed that. But so that kind of wraps up what you can make out of AJ's attire. And yeah, I thought that was fascinating because it does look to me like they are channeling some 80s themes in the attire there. And yeah, I'm just curious to see what they do with that and where that goes. And the white pearl earrings, I wonder what that could signify. Is that um, a status symbol? Maybe pearls are more common a couple thousand years in the future and in this universe. But that is there, so we're mentioning that right now. And yeah, on the top right hand part of AJ's forehead, there's a scar. And so it starts there and then goes down all the way down to her mid right cheek. And presumably this scar, whatever caused this scar, is also the cause of AJ needing the eye patch. We really don't know that much more about it than that. So, but again, that tells us, whoever AJ is, clearly is a pretty tough person. Either lost their eye or lost use of their eye and had a pretty bad scar left to show for it. So, and then that can also tell you something about Jordan, that Jordan is in contact with this person, that this is someone in Jordan's sphere and her circle. So, that's interesting to know as well. Throughout the whole call, AJ is smoking a cigarette. And I thought that was just notable. Again, I guess you could say smoking cigarettes is a sort of 80s thing, but it makes me wonder. I know in Mass Effect, as an example, lung cancer has basically been cured. So the Elusive Man is a very well-known cigarette smoking character, and he's always smoking cigarettes with no health risks because cancer's been cured. We don't know if that's the case in the Intergalactic Heretic Prophet universe, but that's something that AJ is doing. And yeah, one of the last things I would mention about AJ as a character that we know so far, she's expressing concern and caution to Jordan about a lead that she gives Jordan. And I'll dive a lot more into this, in the comprehensive story episode that we'll do on this podcast, probably the very next episode, honestly. But she's giving Jordan this information about Colin and saying that Colin has been tracked to Semperia. And it's just notable that, she's urging caution. She's telling Jordan, look, this is a dangerous place. You should be careful. So it tells you about her character that this is, an intelligent person who is not rash, who's very much trying to do the smart thing, weigh out the smart options. They've been gathering information, and AJ's been helping Jordan to do that. So, I thought that was interesting. At moments throughout the call, AJ can use, some colorful language and some profanities here and there. She seems like a fun person in some ways, someone you could have some fun with. But we don't get to see that much of her throughout this call, so that's really all we have to go on for AJ right now. And with that, yeah, we'll move on because I wanted to talk about AJ's relationship to Jordan. And the only thing we have to go off on all of this is the video call that they have. And I just found this video call to really be worth discussion because it raises a lot of questions about their characters and what the relationship is between their characters. So here's what stood out to me. Towards the end of the call, AJ spends most of the call just giving Jordan information that kind of contributes to the story of the game. But then, Jordan is talking to her about claiming the bounty, and Jordan says, something like, if you don't claim the bounty, I'll find an agent who will. And then AJ pretty much says, okay, fine, again, using some much more funny and colorful language. And then AJ says, you're the boss, at the end of it. And after the bounty is claimed, Jordan says, thank you, kind of with a tone like AJ is really helping her out, like really doing something for her that's meaningful. And, one of the last lines on this call, AJ says to Jordan, listen, kid. And she kind of hesitates and says, I'll see you on the other side. And then, the call is hung up. And so honestly, I almost found it a little confusing because Jordan calls AJ the agent. AJ then says, you're the boss. But then AJ also calls her kid. So it's just an interesting dynamic. I really don't know, what the agent is in this. We know that Jordan's a bounty hunter. We know that AJ is the agent. So maybe the agents work on behalf of certain entities or syndicates who put out bounties, and they assign the bounties to certain bounty hunters. Unfortunately, all we have right now is speculation. But just interesting stuff to analyze and talk about. And Jordan doesn't look like 16 or 18 to be called a kid, so clearly AJ is older than Jordan. But despite that, calls her a kid, but also says you're the boss. So maybe that could tell us something about, the world of bounty hunters and agents in this universe. Unfortunately, we just don't know any more than that. So yeah, with that, we're going to move on to the next section. But first, I am going to take a pause and teleport us to the mid-break of the show. Okay, and welcome to the mid-break of the show. First, we'll just read any reviews or comments that were left from our first episode, of which we had one Spotify comment that was left, which read, awesome! Exclamation point. Thank you for who wrote that. We appreciate it greatly. And yeah, we'll close out this mid-break of the show here, continuing with, one thing we are excited for in this game. For me, today, I am excited to find out what those space lasers on Jordan's ship does. I really hope we find out, although rumors are, you won't ever see real space combat in this game. I hope we do. I hope we get to see how cool those space lasers are. So that's what I got. And now, back to the show. Okay, and we're back from the mid-break of the show, everyone, to episode 2 of the unofficial Intergalactic Heretic Prophet podcast. Everything we know about the characters of the game so far. So now we're going to move on to the 5 Aces photo and the bulletin board, that you can see kind of early on in the trailer. And this is definitely, I think, one of the most talked about pieces of the lore, because this 5 Aces photo is front and center on the bulletin board. It takes all 5 members of the 5 Aces, puts them in one place. You get to see their faces clearly. You clearly see their faces. And so on this photo, the 5 Aces are sitting there. They're MIA criminals. They've all disappeared. With the exception potentially of Jordan, who, you might be playing as, or you are playing as here. And, so they're sitting at this table, and there's like a table with a bunch of money on it, like piled up as if they, just finished a heist or something. And they're all holding a glass of beer. Like, they all have green beers in their hands, and they're holding it up for the photo. So yeah, we're just gonna run through all 5 people in this photograph. So the first person I'll mention is, it looks like Jordan. I will say I've seen some internet chatter that like it could be Jordan's mom or someone related to Jordan. You can see that the person is wearing the same jacket that Jordan is. It's the same type of red, it has the same type of taller collar with kind of like forearm length red sleeves on it. It's interesting. Like, it looks enough like Jordan to me that if Jordan, like, but what's interesting is that Jordan in this photo does not have a shaved head. There's hair on this person's head. So, I'm pretty sure it's Jordan, but I want to leave room for maybe it's not Jordan, and maybe it's someone related to Jordan, and that's part of why Jordan is tracking the 5 Aces. Again, we're totally speculating here. So, we just don't know. But that's one of the first people in the photo. And then sitting right next to Jordan, kind of in the very middle of the photo, is a character we now know is now confirmed to be Tony Dalton. And to be clear, it looks just like Tony Dalton. Like, it's very clearly, definitely Tony Dalton. Specifically, it looks most like him, when he has a mustache, kind of like how he played Joel Miller's dad in The Last of Us, that one episode in season 2 that was recently released. So Tony Dalton, is most notably known for his role in Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad spinoff. But Tony Dalton's been in a lot of other productions too. One interesting note is that this is Tony Dalton's video game debut, and at this point, there's been a pretty widely circulated interview from Neil Druckmann, the creative director of Naughty Dog, and I think the creative lead on this game, who said after seeing Tony Dalton in the episode that he was in of The Last of Us Season 2, that like on set, I guess right after they were done, he offered this role in Intergalactic to Tony Dalton.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
Llegaron los nuevos McCrispy Strips, listos para aventurarse en la mezcla de mayo ketchup, la barbecue que quedó en el fondo de la cajita, Hot Fudge Sundae y en la nueva Creamy Chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Los nuevos McCrispy Strips, ahora en McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Because of that performance in The Last of Us, he was just so moved by it and thought it was so good. So just a cool piece of the lore there. I love knowing stuff like that and talking about that. So yeah, we don't know Tony Dalton character's name. We don't know anything about him. And again, other than a couple a couple blurry photographs on Jordan's bulletin board on her ship that could be a younger version of Tony Dalton's character, but we just don't know, and there's nothing to confirm it. We don't have anything more about Tony Dalton's character to go off. So, yeah, with that, unfortunately, we're forced to move on to the next character, Colin Graves, who is sitting on the far left of the photo of the Five Aces. Colin Graves is played by Kumail Nanjiani, and once again, similar to Tony Dalton, it looks exactly like him. Like there's no question at all that it's Kumail Nanjiani. And all of this is confirmed on IMDb and pretty much every source you read about this game, that it's Kumail Nanjiani's face, voice. Kumail Nanjiani is cast as his character. I first ever saw Kumail Nanjiani in Silicon Valley. My favorite appearance of his is actually in Hulu limited series Welcome to Chippendales. Super fascinating true story. Really cool. I'd encourage everyone to go watch it. And not super long either. But Kumail Nanjiani also played a character in Mass Effect Andromeda named Jarun Tan. So he's been in a sci-fi video game before. I guess it kind of makes sense to cast him in this, that he might have some experience doing it. So yeah, that's exciting. And we know a tiny bit more about Colin Graves than the other characters on the bulletin board, because we know that Jordan is tracking Colin Graves, and they very clearly believe that Colin is alive on Semperia, or he at least made it to Semperia, and that's where they're tracking him to. And then from the bulletin board, yeah, there's a couple other notes and just things you can make out where it seems like Jordan was definitely most actively tracking Colin. She was definitely tracking them all, but there's the most information about Colin. And there's actually a note that says, his mom is dead on the bulletin board. So we know that Colin's mother has passed away. We know that from the bulletin board notes that, he has sold like his car, some other stuff, that he's kind of disappeared. At least all that is implied based on the notes on the bulletin board. So yeah, and we know that he has a bounty on him, and we talked about that in the first episode. You can kind of see that on the bounty screen when Jordan reaches the cockpit. So yeah, we don't have much other information about the character of Colin Graves beyond that. So once again, for lack of information, we are forced to move on to the next character. We only have two left at this point sitting in the photograph, and the next character is sitting to the right of Tony Dalton, and it's a woman with short blonde hair who at this point we know to be cast as the actress Ashley Scott, who played Maria in The Last of Us Part 1 and 2 video games. Unfortunately, Ashley Scott's character name is unknown, but she does look similar to the character does look similar to Ashley Scott. So we know that's her. And yeah, the only other things we know about this character that I can mention are, again, from the first episode of the podcast. If you look through the trailer, you can see that Jordan has pinned up a picture of Ashley Scott's character and like put a red square around her face, and it's the photo is pinned up on top of an article from the Spotlight Sentinel, and the Spotlight Sentinel article is covering a heist about the third largest safety deposit ship that was found empty in space. And Jordan presumably believes that Ashley Scott's character was responsible for this heist and is trying to track it and track her down. And yeah, beyond that, we don't have any more information to go off. So yeah, now we'll get to the last character in the Five Aces photo, and really the last character that we really know anything about, even just how they look. Because at this point, a lot of the Five Aces characters, that's really all we have. We just know that they exist, and here are their faces. So the final character in the photo is someone who has kind of a longer beard, kind of looks like an older man, and the character name is unknown, but it does look somewhat similar to the actor Stephen A. Chang, who we know has been cast for this role. And Stephen A. Chang played Jesse in The Last of Us Part 2. Jesse was one of my favorite characters in Last of Us Part 2 game. I think everybody felt that way, felt very fondly of Jesse. And for that reason, we're all really excited to have Stephen A. Chang being cast in this and to be able to, cross paths with him once again in the gaming world. So yeah, there's one other piece of lore that we have about Stephen A. Chang's character in this, which over on the left-hand side of the bulletin board, there's what looks to be, it's a photo of what looks to be a younger version of Stephen A. Chang's character from when he was sitting in the Five Aces photo. It is a little hard to tell because in the Five Aces photo, he just looks significantly aged and he has a larger beard. It could be that they're two different people. We just don't know at this point. And we also don't know about in this world, what sort of plastic surgery is available, what technology is available. We just don't know enough about the world to know that stuff yet. And if these are people who are going on the run and trying to hide, and changing their appearance drastically are things they may reasonably do, to escape the law if they need to. So, and so along with this photo of the younger version of what it appears to be, the younger version of Stephen A. Chang's character on the bulletin board, there's a sticky note that says, "New lead, check beta tertia sector." So yeah, that's kind of all we got there. Again, we covered this in the first episode. Jordan's tracking them, and we'll do more of a deep dive in what we know about the story in the next episode. But so that's kind of all we got on Stephen A. Chang's character, and the five characters in the Five Aces photo there. And really, we're coming up on the end of our episode here because there's just not that much that we know. We know that Troy Baker has been cast for a role in this game. That is all we know. We do not know his character name. We do not know what the role is. We don't know if it's a significant role, if it's a not significant role. We just don't know. We know that we don't know, and that's it. Yeah, and so for anyone who doesn't know Troy Baker, he voiced Joel in The Last of Us, and was just an incredibly moving character and voice actor in that. But Troy Baker's been in a ton of other stuff too. He was cast in the Uncharted game. He was more recently voicing a character in the Indiana Jones and the Great Circle game. And I would say I mainly know Troy Baker, not even from Joel in The Last of Us games, but actually from The Last of Us TV show, season 1 and season 2 podcasts. I loved listening to those podcasts, and Troy was a great host, just a fantastic host on those podcasts. Seems like an awesome guy. So yeah, we just don't have any more information about Troy Baker's role in the game other than that. And at this point, there's only two characters we could say that I have left to mention. And one of the final characters is, there's been some chatter about a co-pilot character in the game. I did a lot of research and I was having trouble finding anything that actually confirmed that. However, there's one note that I made, and this was in the first episode of this podcast about everything you missed in the first trailer, but there is a box to the left of the door entering Jordan's cockpit on the spaceship. And again, I covered this in the first episode, and if you look really close at that box, it has what looks to be some Japanese lettering and then an English translation with it that literally says co-pilot. So that could be nothing. There could not be a character that's a co-pilot. Right now we're just, speculating based on what's available, but Naughty Dog clearly very intentionally designed and placed, a box that contains some sort of a co-pilot system for the ship and is present there. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see, what role that co-pilot would take on, if any. And will that co-pilot, follow you around the planet or no? I would think I don't know. My inclination would be no right now because Neil Druckmann did an interview where he said, the loneliness might be almost sort of a theme of the game, or that they want players to have a feeling of loneliness. At some point, I'm going to do an episode just about everything Neil and anybody else on the team has done, interviews and stuff in public, that we can pick apart and dissect because it's fun. And that's why we're here. So yeah, there's potentially a co-pilot character, and the final character, I guess I could mention, would be the Semperiums. The people who live on Semperia, and again, all we really know about them are just that they're religious. There's some sort of religion associated with them, but it seems like people in the Intergalactic Heretic Prophet universe don't even really know that much about the Semperians and Semperia, and that's part of the mystery surrounding the planet. So I think I'm gonna do, a separate episode about the Semperians, at a soon but later date. And again, unfortunately, we're forced to do a lot of speculation right now, but hey, I find it fun. I'm excited to find out what all of this is. And, with that, we've kind of covered everything we know about the characters that are going to be in the game so far, their casting, who they all are, and what we know about them. So, yeah, I mean, just like that, 43 minutes has zoomed on by, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in for a second episode here. Until our next episode, hope you all take care, and remember, if you're exploring anywhere near Semperia, make sure you bring extra supplies.